The early morning sun cast amber rays upon the sprawling Kingdom of Oyo. Thick fortress walls and ornate gates protected the city's noble compounds, including that of Chief Nwanka, an influential man once hailed for his generosity and bravery. Yet beneath the regal facade, rumors whispered of his tempestuous youth. Some called him adventurous, others labeled him promiscuous. Now, at 55, he lived alone in a grand house with numerous servants scurrying about for 2 months. Had passed since his barren wife's death. She had been his solace and companion, even though their union never bore children. Her absence left a haunted stillness lingering in every corridor. Despite his wealth and power, sorrow gnawed at Chief Nwanka's soul. Lady Damilola had been a constant presence in his life, supportive, understanding, and patient with his past. Many in Oyo had pitied her childless state, but no one could deny the strong bond she shared with the chief. After her passing, Chief Nwanka withdrew from public gatherings, missing council meetings and royal festivals. In that silence, old memories resurfaced, glimpses of lovers from his reckless youth, scattered seeds he had sown. He wondered if the ghosts of past entanglements might one day resurface. On a balmy morning at precisely 9 o'clock, the quiet in Chief Nwanka's compound was shattered by a loud, persistent banging at the outer gate. The gate man, Abudu, a tall, wiry fellow with sharp eyes, rushed outside. He found a young girl, not yet 20, relentless in her pounding. "Open up!" she shouted. "I must speak to Chief Nwanka." Abudu eyed her suspiciously. She was 17 at most, her posture defiant, though fear lingered in her eyes. He asked her name, but she refused to give it. Despite Abudu's firm refusal to let her in, she tried to force her way past him. The raised voices penetrated the still air. From his balcony, Chief Nwanka overheard the commotion and saw Abudu wrestling with the girl. Something about her fiery stance struck a chord in his memory. He was not certain why. Swiftly, he descended the steps. "Abudu," he called. "Let her be. Allow her in." Abudu's suspicious gaze persisted, but the chief's word was final. With reluctance, he opened the gate. The girl stepped forward, her fierce eyes pinned on the chief. In her hand, she held a sealed letter. The trembling of her fingertips contradicted her bravado. Inside the chief's grand sitting room, the girl introduced herself as Adeola. She wore a threadbare dress, though she carried herself with dignity. She extended the letter, and Chief Nwanka opened it carefully. The scrawled handwriting made his heart jolt. It belonged to a woman he had once known, Asake. The letter revealed a sob story of how Asake, after leaving him for another wealthy man, had fallen upon hard times. She had discovered Chief Nwanka's rise in power and fortune. The letter commanded Adeola to seek him out, to claim him as her father, and more subtly, to secure a future for her mother as well. Chief Nwanka's eyes traced each word, recalling how Asake had left him. He had been young, still forging his path. She had been ambitious and hungry for luxury. When she found a man richer than he was at the time, she vanished from Nwanka's life without so much as a goodbye. Now, nearly 2 decades later, her daughter stood before him, demanding answers. Chief Nwanka's heart pounded. Was Adeola truly his child? The letter insinuated it. The resemblance in her cheekbones and brow unsettled him. Before he could fully process this, a second round of banging at the gate erupted. Abudu exchanged a baffled look with the chief. Moments after letting Adeola in, he now faced another unexpected visitor. This time, the girl at the gate introduced herself. "My name is Bola," she said, voice unsteady, "and I'm Chief Nwanka's daughter." Shocked, Abudu turned to glance at Adeola, who was peering from within the courtyard. Bola was 16, slender, with eyes shadowed by weariness. The chief, stepping out to the veranda, waved his hand. "Allow her in," he instructed once again. Another piece of his past had just surfaced, perhaps to unravel his carefully guarded present. Adeola and Bola found themselves standing awkwardly in Chief Nwanka's large foyer. The mansion's marble floors and towering pillars testified to his wealth. Bola, though no less nervous, offered a polite greeting to Adeola. Adeola simply nodded, hesitant to open up to this newcomer who claimed the same father. Chief Nwanka, caught in a whirlwind of confusion, demanded explanations. Bola spoke of her mother, an addict who cared more about narcotics than her daughter. Forced to live with an abusive uncle, Bola's life had been misery. Now, her mother insisted she seek out Chief Nwanka for solace. Before the chief could respond to either daughter, a third figure rushed past the opened gate. This girl, another 16-year-old, darted through with surprising agility, ignoring Abudu's protests. Her face brimmed with desperation as she thrust a photograph into Chief Nwanka's hands. A pang of recognition coursed through him. The woman in the picture was Monifa, a warm-hearted friend he once comforted through tough times. Had he fathered her daughter as well? The girl nodded fervently. She offered no name at first, tears brimming, in her eyes as if to say the photograph spoke all that needed speaking. Gathered now in the main reception hall stood 3 girls, each bearing an uncanny resemblance to the flustered man before them, Chief Nwanka. He glimpsed his own features in their eyes and cheekbones, the shape of their lips, the arch of their brows. Memories of youth came flooding back, a life of fleeting passions, unplanned consequences, unspoken goodbyes. Now those consequences stood physically before him. "We cannot discuss this in chaos," the chief declared, leading them to seats. Abudu hovered by the doorway, eyes gleaming with intrigue. None noticed the subtle exchange of glances between Abudu and the maid, Halima, who lingered nearby. Just as calm threatened to settle, Halima, the chief's maid, a slender, soft-spoken woman, entered with a trembling adolescent. The girl wore a simple hijab. She gazed around in apprehension, gripping a small satchel. "Al-Hajjah's daughter," Halima explained. The mention of Al-Hajjah jolted Chief Nwanka. He indeed remembered a devout Muslim woman he once courted in a moment of youthful folly. He had not seen her in over 15 years. The girl timidly introduced herself as Zara. Her mother had sent her, hoping to spare Zara from a forced marriage to a man older than the chief himself. With Zara's arrival, the tally of girls had now risen to 4. In one morning, Chief Nwanka felt as though 1,000 burdens had settled upon his shoulders. Each girl carried a story shaped by heartbreak, neglect, and desperation. Perhaps the strangest twist was how the mothers, upon discovering his wealth, had pointed these children to him, some seeking genuine paternal protection, others with more cunning motives. The chief's heart clenched in guilt. He wondered how many more might surface. Could he fulfill a fatherly role after all these years of denial? As commotion filled the house, Chief Nwanka's mind drifted to his late wife, Damilola. She had been a pillar of compassion. Even though she could not bear children of her own, she had never begrudged him. On her sickbed, she often reminded him to be kind to others, especially to those he had wronged in his youth. He felt her presence now, her voice echoing in his mind to embrace responsibility. Her memory, so fresh and tender, seemed to offer forgiveness for the mistakes he had made when he was younger and far less wise. Late in the afternoon, the chief received a phone call from the caretaker in Canada, who looked after Anu, the child Chief Nwanka had sent abroad. She had been 16 for only a few months, but she had grown restless after learning of her mother's demise. The caretaker announced that Anu wished to return immediately to Nigeria to pay final respects to her mother's memory. The chief, still reeling from the day's events, consented. Little did he know she was already on her way. Alone in the dimly lit servants' quarters, Abudu and Halima conferred in hushed tones. "He's busy with these children," Halima observed with a sly smile. "Vulnerable." Abudu nodded. "He is drowning in family drama. This is our chance." They had been plotting ever since Lady Damilola's death, convinced that once the chief had no clear heir, they could stage his demise, claim his estate, and flee Nigeria. But now, with these sudden heirs, the plan required urgent recalibration. They whispered late into the night, forging a twisted scheme to ensure their own comfort and wealth, no matter the cost. Adeola wandered the corridors, noting the grandeur. She had slept on cramped floors most of her life. Her mother's letter came to mind, its urgency, its promise of Chief Nwanka's wealth. She hated being her mother's pawn, yet she also desperately needed the stability the chief could provide. Meanwhile, Bola dozed fitfully, plagued by dreams of her uncle's cruelty. The third 16-year-old, whom the chief learned was named Sade, stared at her mother's photograph. She tried to recall the father she had never known, searching for hope. Zara knelt in prayer, whispering for God's protection in this new, strange home. The sun rose over Oyo, gilding the palace rooftops with golden light. Chief Nwanka had barely slept. Downstairs, the four daughters gathered awkwardly for breakfast. Halima served them but cast watchful glances at Abudu. The chief cleared his throat and began, "I will ensure we do paternity tests. If you truly are my daughters, I vow to support you." Relief flickered in some eyes. Doubt lingered in others. The truth remained. They hardly knew each other. Outside the compound, the city buzzed with rumors. People whispered about the stream of teenage girls entering Chief Nwanka's gates. Though the Kingdom of Oyo was modernizing, its people still held strong to tradition. Restless with the events unfolding, Chief Nwanka decided to visit the oracle, an elderly priest who had once counseled his father. Late in the afternoon, the chief traveled by horse-drawn carriage to a secluded shrine by the Ogun River. The swirling incense and soft incantations enveloped him as the oracle listened to his plight. The priest closed his eyes and invoked the ancestors. "Your past returns to test you," came the rasping prophecy. "Embrace what you have created, or all will be lost." While the chief was away, the girls explored the courtyard. Adeola and Bola struck up a conversation, sharing fragments of their stories. Sade remained quiet, only answering in short sentences. Zara politely kept her distance, standing near the koi fish pond with reverent composure. From a second-floor window, Halima looked on. "We must handle them too," she muttered to Abudu, who peered from behind heavy drapes. If these girls became legal heirs, their claim on the estate would complicate the conspirators' plan immeasurably. Just before dusk, a rickety taxi pulled up at the gate. Out stepped Anu, travel-weary from her long flight and equally long road journey from the airport. Abudu hesitated, but quickly recognized the chief's only known daughter, his child with the late Lady Damilola, who had been sent abroad for schooling. Her eyes were red from crying and from the exhaustion of urgent travel. She carried a small suitcase and a folded letter from her Canadian guardian. "Where is my father?" she asked, her voice cracking. Abudu put on his usual suspicious glare, but nonetheless opened the gate. Anu entered the foyer and was shocked to find 4 girls, all around her age, gathered in the lavish living room. Each introduced herself haltingly, claiming to be Chief Nwanka's daughter. Disbelief and hurt shadowed Anu's face. She had been raised to believe she was the chief's only child, albeit a miracle he and Damilola rarely discussed in public. Overwhelmed, Anu sank into a velvet armchair, tears threatening to spill. She did not know whether to resent them or to pity them. After all, they bore the same father she loved yet hardly knew. Night fell, and Chief Nwanka returned from the oracle's shrine to find Anu home. Despite his grief, a smile of relief tugged at his lips. He embraced her, absorbing her quiet sobs. Then, stepping back, he struggled to explain the situation. How 4 more girls had appeared, all claiming to be his offspring. Anu listened, face pale. The chief realized that in trying to shield Anu from his past, he had inadvertently woven a web of secrets. Now confronted with the truth, father and daughter both felt their world shift precariously. In the days that followed, Chief Nwanka moved forward with DNA tests at a local clinic. Rumors spread across Oyo that the chief was gathering a harem of daughters, fueling gossip at the market stalls. Meanwhile, the girls tried to adapt. Adeola and Bola, who shared a room, found a fragile sisterly bond in their daily chit-chat. Sadi spent time in the library, flipping through dusty volumes, to distract herself from the confusion. Zara's devotion to her faith intrigued Anu, who sometimes joined her for evening prayers, seeking solace in spiritual quiet. When the test results arrived, the clinic's courier delivered them in a sealed envelope. Chief Nwanka gathered the girls and read the official statements one by one. Tension crackled in the air. In each case, the test confirmed a paternal match. The hush that fell over the group was profound. Relief, shock, and a tinge of betrayal mingled in the atmosphere. All 5 girls, Anu, Adeola, Bola, Sade, and Zara, were indeed half-sisters. Chief Nwanka heaved a shuddering sigh. Truth had a way of leveling all illusions. Now he faced the weighty responsibility of fatherhood multiplied by 5. Gathering courage, Zara and Sade crept to the chief's private study, where he often retreated before bed to read or reflect. They found him dozing in an armchair, half-finished documents scattered across the desk. Sade shook him gently awake. "Baba," she murmured, "we must speak, now." Though groggy, the chief snapped to attention as they recounted what Zara had witnessed. Shock and fury sparked in his eyes. His first instinct was disbelief. Halima had been with them for years, loyal and helpful. But as he recalled peculiar glances and suspicious behavior, dread weighed on him. He asked the girls to stay hidden while he confronted Halima. Halima entered the study a few minutes later, carrying the tainted teapot. She feigned a courteous smile. "Evening tea, sir?" she offered, voice sweet. Chief Nwanka steeled himself. "No, Halima," he said quietly. "Set it down." Her face twitched with concern. Abudu hovered in the doorway, fists clenched. One by one, the other daughters appeared, Adeola and Bola, awakened by the commotion, while Anu lingered behind them, alarmed. Zara glanced at the teapot nervously. The chief raised an accusatory finger. "Halima, what have you done?" For a moment, silence reigned, the tension thick as the equatorial humidity. Abudu, seeing the plan unravel, lunged forward. He snatched the teapot and flung it aside, its contents spilling across the floor. Then he advanced on Chief Nwanka, brandishing a small knife. Gasps echoed in the room. The chief, once a famed fighter, instinctively dodged to the side, blocking the blade with his forearm. Meanwhile, Halima tried to slip away, but Adeola and Bola cornered her with trembling resolve. Abudu unleashed years of pent-up resentment, shouting how he deserved the chief's fortune for slaving in the household. Chief Nwanka grappled with him, fearlessly defending his life and the lives of his daughters. Commotion rippled through the corridors. Anu bolted to call for guards, though few roamed at night. Said and Zara pressed themselves against the wall, eyes wide. Adeola and Bola gripped Halima's arms, preventing her escape. The clang of metal and scuff of shoes on marble floors reverberated like a thunderstorm. At last, 2 watchmen from a nearby estate, drawn by the noise, rushed to Chief Nwanka's aid. Together, they wrested the weapon from Abudu's grasp, subduing him. A hush, broken only by ragged breathing, fell upon them all. In the aftermath, Anu knelt beside her father, trembling as she checked him for injuries. His arm bore a deep slash. She tore a strip from her clothing to staunch the bleeding. Her tears fell freely. "Father, you could have died," she whispered. The near tragedy stripped away the bitterness she had felt. She realized how precious life was and how quickly it could slip away. Adeola, Bola, Sade, and Zara gathered around, their fear uniting them. For the first time, they stood side by side, fiercely protective of the man who had, despite his failings, brought them together. By morning, the local guards had taken Halima and Abudu into custody. A swift inquiry by the palace authorities ensued. Their confessions tumbled out. Yes, they had planned to poison the chief, then forge his documents, sell his possessions, and flee the country. The evidence was damning. The bottle of poison, the forged signatures, and witness testimonies from the daughters. In a formal hearing, the royal council declared they would face severe punishment, likely banishment from Oyo or imprisonment for attempted murder. Chief Nwanka, arm bandaged, watched in grim silence as 2 people he once trusted were led away in chains. A quiet sense of relief settled over the mansion. Though physically wounded and emotionally shaken, Chief Nwanka felt a surge of gratitude for each of his daughters who had saved him from a treacherous end. In the days following the incident, he convened with them often, discussing their futures. Adeola wanted to study law. Bola desired an environment free from abuse and addiction. Sade revealed a hidden passion for the arts. Zara sought advanced Islamic education and a stable home. Anu, more at peace now, vowed to remain in Nigeria longer, longing to reconnect with her heritage. The chief promised them each the care, guidance, and support he should have provided from the start. In the golden light of dawn, the household rose to a new day, one absent of hidden threats. Chief Nwanka stood in his courtyard, each of his 5 daughters gathered around him. They had survived a night that could have ended in tragedy and heartbreak. A swirl of uncertain futures stretched before them, but for the first time they faced it together as a family. The chief felt Lady Damilola's gentle spirit near, as though blessing this moment. He looked into the eyes of his daughters, Adeola, Bola, Sade, Zara, and Anu, and saw reflections of his own soul, mistakes and all. Determined, he whispered a silent vow, to be the father they deserved and redeem a past marred by negligence. Outside, the Kingdom of Oyo bustled with a new story to tell, a story of a once wayward chief who found redemption in the unlikeliest of homecomings. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and share.